Kmet shakes a tackle. Big Dude just barreling into the Hokie secondary. Another first down near midfield.
I love these guys, these tight ends. They are physical. They've got good hands. Yeah, this guy's 6'5", 260.
Welcome back to Tape Don't Lie. We're going to see C. Martin a little bit, but now we got to bring in Max Browne. Max, what's going on?
What's up, Mike? How we doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I love talking tight ends. We're going to get to talk some tight ends with you. When you look at, as a quarterback, when you look at a tight end, what are you looking for? What do you like out of them?
Yeah, he's your safety blanket. I think when you're in trouble, he's the guy you can dump a pass to. I think today we're in a football age where you want more athleticism out of that position as maybe a decade ago, but you're still wanting the blocking ability. You're still wanting him to be an extra hat that can really take advantage of box numbers and whatnot. But yeah, there's some good tight ends in this class. Some guys are better pass catchers and whatnot. But for me, I want to air it out. So I want the athleticism and the ability to stretch the field.
Yeah, it's all about these guys they're seeing an increase in their roles, obviously. And when you look at Notre Dame, you look at that tight end spot, we know that they've produced some quality tight ends. Cole Kmet sits at the top in terms of single season touchdowns. This guy can really play.
Without a doubt. And both those names there alongside him, Tyler Eifert. He's been injury prone, but he's been in the league for a long, long time, a high-end tight end. And then Troy Nicholas was a similar top draft pick, a guy that people were excited about, didn't really work out in the NFL. But anytime you're in that boat of Notre Dame tight ends, there's a lot of them, a lot of great ones, and they all look awfully similar, 6'5", 6'6", athletic, and can move the rock. But obviously getting done, I think the Brian Kelly offense certainly helped him, and he's a guy who's on the younger side, but all the talent in the world.
Yeah, so he was the number 4 tight end when he came out in 2017. Let's get into it. 43 catches for 515 yards, 6 touchdowns. But the big thing I want to start out with is toughness, right? Toughness, you talked about tight ends being more athletic, but I love the toughness out of Kmet. This kid is one of those guys that defensive backs don't want to tackle.
Without a doubt. And you asked me what I want as a quarterback. Well, if I'm a tight end, I don't want my quarterback to throw this ball late. Ian Book's got to get it out on time. But when you have a great tight end like Kmet, he can improvise for you. He takes this hit, he hangs onto it, and that's one thing that Kmet's great at is at the top of his routes. He's in and out of breaks, very smooth. And I think when you talk about a guy who is 6'6", 240, that's a big boy. The fact that he's great at the top of his routes is something that NFL coaches are going to love.
Yeah, I think so too. He's tough. He runs good routes. Now we get to see him in space. I think people undersell his athleticism. You see him here on the screen.
Yeah, this is a little bit unique. You're not going to see a lot of this in the NFL when you talk about a true RPO and you're throwing a bubble to a tight end. But here he is, and he makes I won't say he makes a guy miss because it's more of just kind of a bad tackle, but he's the type of guy of, in terms of athleticism, he's going to take what's there. He's not going to break it down. He's not an Evan Ingram type or a Hunter Bryant type who's another tight end, but he's solid and he's athletic enough to make you miss at 5 and pick up 10.
Yeah, I think that his ability, even just the balance, right, to see that sidestep a little bit and obviously take advantage of that poor angle to pick up the first down. But again, look at the way he finishes off these plays. I love the way that he's punishing guys for tackling him.
Without a doubt. I've seen that the high-end comparison is a Gronk. That, to me, is best-case scenario, but that's the type of feel when you see these guys having such a hard time tackling them.
Yeah, and then we do get into, and I think this is an interesting one right here because you get him crossing a field, and look at the way that he is able to run away from this linebacker. So he does have the element of possibly being a mismatch if guys overplay or oversell on play action.
Without a doubt. And that's the one thing that pops on film is he is a guy that does do a great job kind of really owning the middle. When you talk about seam routes down the middle of the field and also drag routes like we're seeing here, he's got a great gauge for finding an opening there. And obviously some of that has to do with scheme, but he's a guy that can do a lot. I think there's one, he doesn't really jump off the screen and say he's got a crazy, crazy strength, but Kmet, he's a guy that has no weaknesses. And right there, we're seeing great yards after catch.
Yeah, and boom, this one right here, you mentioned him in the seam and owning the middle. There's no better example than this. And then I want to point out, look at how this safety struggles to get him on the ground.
Without a doubt. This is where the size comes into play. This is why people love him, right? He's got a big frame, and I think a lot of people talk like it's something he can grow into. Well, the reality is, if they're having that much difficulty tackling him there, imagine what it'll be like as he gets older, as he gets stronger. And I think that's what coaches love. And this is taking the entire Stanford Cardinal defense to tackle him. That means something for sure.
Yeah, this is one of those things, and I say this as a guy, like I remember in spring ball one time, we had a tight end running up the seam like that, and I was coming back to the middle of the field. And I was like, oh, I'm going to knock this guy out. And then I didn't completely forget that the guy's 250 pounds, and that thing hurts you. And I think that that's what Kmet is going to bring to some safeties at the next level.
Without a doubt. I think what excites me too is he is probably the most complete tight end when you talk about across the board of all the tight ends available. And if a team needs an F, which is a more athletic tight end, I feel like he can play that role. He's athletic enough. Or if they need a traditional Y inline tight end, a guy that can block and get in the trenches, that's where he needs to grow. But he can definitely do it. And I like Kmet. I don't think he's necessarily a first rounder, but I think he's great value in second, third round. And I think a team could fall in love with him for sure.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see what he runs in terms of his 40 time, and obviously look at the strength numbers. When you look at this, Notre Dame, I mean, goodness gracious, just getting guys in the NFL making catches. So obviously Kyle Rudolph, Anthony Fasano, Tyler Eifert, who we've talked about before. I think that the key with Kmet, and you mentioned the blocking, I like that he has a can-do attitude, and more importantly, a will-do attitude when it comes to blocking.
Without a doubt. And like I said, he's on the younger side. So in terms of just sheer strength, that is something he can grow into. But that's good company right there. I know all those guys weren't NFL home runs, but Kyle Rudolph, he's been a mainstay in the NFL. If Tyler Eifert stayed healthy, he'd be a mainstay in the NFL. So I think anytime you got a 6'6", 250 Notre Dame tight end coming out, you got to love it.
Look, I love this. And this is him. He's in line right here. And look at the way he locks on to Dax Hollifield and just buries him.
Yeah, and I think this is, I mean, he's using the leverage very, very well. I think you talk about a safety or outside linebackers trying to set the edge on the outside. He says, all right, I'll use your leverage and just kind of push you to the side. But I think one thing that does jump out is he's getting the job done, but it isn't necessarily this overpower physicality nature, which is kind of the area where you want to see him grow in if you're an NFL GM.
Yeah, and I think that obviously we talked about it already with Hunter Bryant. We're going to talk about it with Harrison Bryant. We're going to talk about it with Colby Parkinson. I think that his attitude for it, the will do, which is why I said that, we can see that he wants to block. He wants to fire off the ball and find somebody to hit. I think that can go a long way to somebody coaching him up from a strength, from a technique standpoint.
Without a doubt. And you talk about guys improving their stock this spring. It's not only the 40-yard dash and the three-cone and all that. It's obviously the conversations they have with these GMs, and that can-do attitude's definitely going to come up. But I think right here is a great example. We saw earlier play where he's bubble screening out wide. Well, now he's in the trenches playing against Stanford, a physical team, and he's able to match up there. I think the fact that he can do both is why he's going to have a successful career in the NFL, because he'll find a role, whether it's more of a pass catcher, whether it's doing both. I think an offensive coordinator knows that he's just a traditional tight end in that respect, and they'll find a role for him in any offense.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a role for him in multiple different systems, but I love just his willingness to fire off. He's not wondering, am I going to block this outside guy? Am I going to block this inside guy? He knows I'm going to get this inside guy. He's a bigger threat for us to get into the end zone. I've also got somebody coming across to pick up the outside man. I just love that about him, and I love the way, and I wanted to get this tight one in here, the way that he comes off the ball and really just wants to go get it.
Yeah, and both these blocking plays he's using leverage to his advantage. He's getting the inside shoulder. He's forcing the outside. I mean, number two, you can go to the right all you want. That's not where the run play's doing. He's smart. He knows what his job and what his responsibility is. And I just think that mindset, that mentality that you've alluded to twice, I touched on, when you talk about paying a guy millions and millions of dollars, that's comforting for these GMs that are writing the check.
Yeah, he feels like the most complete, and the guy that's shown probably the most NFL-ready game from a total standpoint, pass catching, route running, and obviously the blocking. Some of the other guys not as efficient or not as quality in terms of blocking. So when you look at a guy like Kmet, and you look at what we're seeing, obviously, with whether it's Travis Kelce, whether it is Kittle, where we're seeing all these guys come up, do you see him having the potential to bubble up to the top in the next level?
I'm going to be a little bit harsh. I don't think he's ever going to be to those guys' level. I don't think it is a Travis Kelce or a George Kittle, but I think he can be a mainstay in an offense of just a solid tight end. I mean, I grew up a Seattle Seahawks fan. John Carlson was on the board there, a former Notre Dame guy. That's kind of what I see, is just a mainstay, solid tight end in an offense, but I don't see the groundbreaking game changer like we've seen with some other guys.
Hey, that's a good thing to be, though. That'll keep you in the NFL for a long time.